Last week, we talked about why so many professionals hate meetings. And in fact, the issue is rarely the meeting itself. See, it's what happens inside the meeting that leaves people feeling deflated, unheard, discouraged, and generally not contributing their best. So, if meetings are where decisions are made, and where relationships can be strengthened if we let it, or of course strained, and where information moves across the organization, in fact, possibly across the entire sector, the meeting should be a place where innovation and collaboration are sparked. Instead, many talk about meetings as how they quietly do the opposite: hesitation and hierarchy and silence. See, the good news is that fixing the meeting does not require a complete redesign of your entire calendar or even a complex facilitation process. Believe me, I've tried that and it doesn't work. Often begins with something much simpler: asking better questions and reinforcing a few disciplined practices that signal curiosity, recognition, of course, and ownership. So, like any good coach, of course, it starts with better questions. And as a coach for the last 15 plus years, I can tell you everything it opens up when you ask questions rather than just make statements. Imagine if everyone's voice was heard, both by the asking as well as the weighing in. So, no matter what your role is, your relationship in a meeting, questions can be your secret weapon. In fact, how about your secret gift rather than a weapon for shifting the culture, encouraging connection, and of course, reinforcing recognition, which ultimately helps to fuel innovation. So, if you want better meetings, start with better questions. Meetings often become frustrating because conversations revolve around updates, problems, opinions without moving towards learning or progress. And the fastest way to know that a shift in dynamics can happen is by asking questions, particularly ones that invite people to think differently and different voices to express new or existing ideas that don't normally get aired. And this reflection back through the questions you ask actually helps people to think differently. It's this concentric circle that allows a richness, depth, evolving thinking. And given that we desperately need to find ways to innovate and move in through this world of disruption, we need new solutions. So questions can spur greater insight, innovation, connection. In fact, we're so serious about this, we built a new Meetings That Matter tool. So if you haven't downloaded it, take a look at it. It's in the notes below. You need this tool. So let me talk about some of them. Questions that inspire learning. So instead of getting stalled in that problem-focused situation, ask, what did we learn from this? See, this simple question allows it to move a conversation into learning. It reinforces setbacks or information, not failure. This is what I'm talking about in my Flip Side of Failing book. That resistance in the face of failure, setbacks, and roadblocks is the surest fire way to squash trying culture, which, fun fact, Iceland, they've known for their trying culture. I'll talk about that more in a future article. See, here's a key question that we should also ask too. Who might know more about this? See, this encourages people to bring additional expertise to the conversation rather than assuming that the current group has to solve every problem just because it's on the agenda. It also allows you to think about who is not in the room, such as people who are actually doing the work, interfacing with suppliers, engaging with customers. They don't need to be in the meeting for their voices to help inform the conversation at the meeting. Who better to give insights than the people whose role knows the issue best? See, until such time that we have those outside perspectives, and when the discussion feels stuck, you need to be able to continue to dig into that well, such as what might work? That's a powerful question that unlocks just about any situation. It opens the door to possibilities instead of reinforcing the limitations and the stuckness that happened in the first place. See, often we're trying to do new things, but we're belaboring the things we don't know, that we haven't tried, that we've fallen into the trap of the idea that must be proven before it's experimented with. However, if we just try something, I'm not saying risky behavior, I mean something that is an educated bet. This encourages a sense of ownership. So let's actually dig more into those questions that build accountability. So here are some questions that can build a sense of ownership. And this really gets at one of the most frustrating things that happens in meetings. People leave without the clarity about who's responsible for what happens next. How frustrating it is to talk about the next step only to find out in the following meeting, nothing has happened since then. Or maybe what was agreed upon wasn't actioned. See, the problem isn't necessarily the person though. It might be the issue not having been clarified what was expected, by when, by who, and what success looks like. See, sometimes we're moving so fast in the spirit of being productive, but we sacrifice efficiency. Redoing work is disempowering. Not only does it waste our efforts and get us nowhere, it also makes the surefire way that people stop showing up, quiet quitting, right? So we need to be careful to push towards productivity, but not beyond what we understand is the root issue. We need to get at the root issue to find the best next opportunity. Trying and experimenting can have rigor. Therefore, it needs to have careful attention. Now, it's not what my British mother would call willy-nilly. I always loved growing up and saying willy-nilly. It was very weird as a kid saying willy-nilly. But the point is, ownership can help improve a sense of clarity and getting past assumptions. So we're not doing willy-nilly, just, trying all kinds of different things. What we're asking essentially is, what do we need to know to move forward? So this question helps us to identify the pursuit of progress, not perfection. Another example of this question would be maybe, how would we know that this is working? Even a little. The even a little is optional. See, conversations that are grounded in outcomes rather than endless discussion allows us to get greater commitment, such as who owns the next step and by when. Clear commitments prevent that familiar meeting outcome in which everyone agrees to something, that it's important at least, but no one's responsible or willing to take responsibility to take the next action. Which brings me to questions that encourage innovation. Innovation rarely happens in meetings where people feel judged or rushed. People have to believe that their ideas and their issues are safe to surface and that they don't live in this constant state of being on guard or being ready to be torn down at any minute. Maybe they'll be ostracized or minimized. Do you give huge credit to people who are willing to say the things that no one else is talking about? The ideas that maybe seem so simple that they might just work, and maybe even something that's totally out of the ordinary. This isn't just about what has been tried before. It's also the courage to consider that future-focused thinking. So when Rome was burning, it wasn't off message. It can be off message to talk about the preferred future, sure, because Rome's literally burning. But you know what? We often think that Rome's burning, but sometimes we need to take a hot minute to think like, what might help even a little bit? See, someone bravely offering a perspective that helps us to shift out of or consider something that's out of the current stuckness allows us to stop fixating on that current challenge in reality and be curious about what else is possible. The small shifts in language can make a huge difference. Questions can grease the wheels. So things like, what would we be glad we tried a year from now? See, this question reframes risk and encourages intelligent experimentation. Another version of this question that I love is, how might this succeed even if the outcomes aren't perfect? This reinforces progress over perfection and reduces the fear around trying something new, which of course, as high achievers, we are fearful that something will not work according to plan. But when we try something new and we consider what could we try, it's based on our existing skills, our resources, our ideas. It's what we already know we have available. And in fact, a powerful innovation prompt is, what is better as a result of trying this? It encourages teams to look for momentum rather than focusing only on what needs improvement. Sometimes a small glimmer of success can open the doors to a whole range of possibilities that enable braver, bolder action. And that creates this incredible momentum within ourselves for more ideas and also within the team. So let's talk about, of course, questions that reinforce recognition, because this is foundational to also brave teams. And I know it's not surprising to anyone that I'm going to suggest that recognition is key to better meetings. Because really, have you ever been to a meaningful meeting where people didn't feel acknowledged, that they were not, their voice didn't matter? I mean, really said plainly, recognition is one of the fastest ways to shift the emotional tone of any meeting. Instead of fixating on the agenda stacked with back-to-back problems or updates, leaders and peers alike can deliberately create moments where progress and effort is acknowledged. Celebrating the small wins allows you to find the big wins. Something that is simple that could create a prompt for this is, what went well this week? See, are the gains being captured before you're off to the next thing? If this happens, here's something you could say. What is a win worth celebrating now? What about those people inside and outside of the meetings? What made that win possible? Could you consider for your next meeting who and which teams need to know that their efforts were noticed and are needed? Create the recognition ripple effect that connects. There's some connective tissue and glue between meetings. Here's another question. Who helped move something forward? When recognition becomes a regular part of meetings and in between meetings, it signals that effort matters and that progress is visible. Over time, these moments strengthen motivation, engagement, and collaboration across teams. And again, isn't that what we're needing to do now to be able to build an innovative future? So let's talk about some small practices that change meeting culture. This is where you're going to want to download the meanings of mattering. These tools where we're creating questions and these prompts where people can feel a greater sense of mattering and therefore are willing to ask these questions. Because alongside these questions, a few discipline practices can help transform meetings and the way they feel as well as how they function. So download that tool, Meanings of Mattering, Shared Practices. You can use it as a starting point and evolve it as a team as well. So here are a few things that you told us really have made all the difference. Number one, we recognize before critique. See, acknowledging effort and progress before offering feedback, it lowers people's defensiveness and it makes constructive dialogue easier. Here's another one. Every contribution deserves oxygen. Ideas are explored before being evaluated, allowing creativity to surface before judgment. It shuts things down. So we can't have that happen. Here's another one you like. Progress is visible. Even small wins are acknowledged so that people see the difference that they're making and they're willing to put more ideas on the table because they see that progress building for effort being acknowledged. Can you see the parallels of how these align to the questions above? Imagine if you had both the practices and the powerful questions. What an unstoppable combination that would be. Because remember, the goal is not perfection, it's intentionality. As a recovering perfectionist, I'll tell you, it is the secret sauce of making progress even when you're not sure of the next step. Meetings did not become problematic overnight, nor is there any improvement that's immediate. However, progress is acknowledging that there are glimmers of progress along the way, and being able to see that means that we're willing to keep trying and iterating. So here's a simple test for your next meetings. If you want to quickly evaluate your culture, try asking yourself 3 questions after your meeting. You can ask yourself this, or you can ask it as a team. Did people feel comfortable contributing ideas? Did the conversation move learning and solutions forward? Did people leave with clarity and energy about what comes next? If the answer to those questions is no, any one of them, it is time to rethink the signals that your meetings are sending. And as I've said over and over, and I know you might be sick of it by now, meetings should not make people feel like they need to have to survive them. Should not feel like a survival strategy. Meetings exist for a reason. They need to invite people to keep coming back with their great ideas, with an ability to iterate and improve, because after all, Meetings must be a conversational ecosystem in which innovation can thrive, not shut it down. Said another way, meetings must be a place of meaningful progress to happen. So where people feel personally meaningful, that their contributions that they've made have been acknowledged, noticed, and capitalized on. It doesn't mean that you have to do everything that's suggested. It just simply means we want suggestions to move forward. And we as a team are here to help. If less than ideal meetings are slowing down decision making, weakening collaboration, discouraging innovation of your team and organization, please know you're not alone and you're not getting it wrong. Many organizations recognize that there's a problem, but struggle to change the habits that reinforce it. And meetings don't happen on their own. They're in a contextual context, in a cultural context. So as a recognition expert, I help organizations redesign the kind of conversations that teams can be stronger and more solution-oriented in, where there's greater cross-team connection, accountability, collaborative innovation. So sometimes that work begins with a leadership retreat or a development session. Other times, coaching has unlocked a broader conversational structure and norm. Whatever that looks like, I would be thrilled to chat with you about how meetings and having better, more resourceful, solution-oriented conversations can help you, your team, your organization evolve in the era of disruption. It's not getting the perfect strategy. It's taking seriously what is happening and what needs to happen to continue to evolve. So reach out, Sarah McDaniel here at Greatness Magnified, greatnessmagnified.com. Send us a message and let's chat. In the meantime, you may be interested in a new keynote called Reimagine, Work Reimagined, where we're reimagining what it can look like in this future world of work. And of course, you can imagine that we do briefly touch on the importance of meetings. So how can I help? How can I serve? I'm here for you. Thank you for doing the very best that you can. And I'm looking forward to being able to have conversations with you in the future. Go forth and meeting strong.